It's being called one of the worst scandals in the history of Minnesota. Our local Fox affiliate has been investigating an alleged scheme involving daycare and what appears to be rampant fraud in a state program costing taxpayers as much as $100 million in a single year. But what's even more troubling is where the money's going, possibly overseas to fund terrorism. Fox 9 Minneapolis investigator Jeff Abeler reports.
5 years ago, the Fox 9 investigators were first to report that daycare fraud was on the rise here in Minnesota. We exposed how some businesses were gaming the system to steal millions in government subsidies meant to help low-income families with their child care expenses.
In order for the scheme to work, the daycare centers need to sign up low-income families that qualify for child care assistance funding. These surveillance videos are from a case prosecuted by Hennepin County. They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up. But either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of child care. This video from that same case shows a man handing out envelopes of what are believed to be kickback payments to parents who are in on the fraud.
Where was the money going?
I don't know exactly where it went.
One recent federal case points to at least some of the money going overseas.
Of the United States.
This is video of Fozia Ali being sworn in as a member of the City of Hopkins Park Board. As she was taking her oath of office, she was also under investigation for wire fraud and theft of public money. State and federal agents had already raided Ali's daycare center in South Minneapolis. The business was suspected of billing the government for over $1 million worth of bogus child care services.
We found records that indicated that she was collecting a significant amount of money for a much larger number of children than were actually attending the center.
Did any of the money go overseas?
We are aware that some of the funds went overseas, which she was cashing out money from the business.
Do you have any idea what it was going for?
I can't say.
Can't say or don't know?
I can't say.
Investigators analyzed Ali's cell phone to track her activities. She'd taken a 2-month trip from Minnesota to Dubai and then Kenya, staying at times in $800 a night hotel rooms. She used an app on her phone to bill the state of Minnesota for child care services while she was out of the country. Ali pled guilty to the daycare fraud and this March started serving time in a federal prison. She declined our request for an interview.
We believe that there's a scope of fraud out there that we need to really get our arms around and ensure that those dollars are going to the kids that really need them.
The acting commissioner for the Department of Human Services told us his agency has 10 daycares currently under active investigation for fraud. We've learned dozens more are considered suspicious. Search warrants obtained by the Fox 9 investigators show each one of the suspect centers has received several $1 million in child care assistance funds.
How much confidence can you say that it's likely some of this money is going towards terrorism?
I'd say absolutely, absolutely. Our sources tell us that. Good sources from the community, leaders. My personal feeling is we need a nationwide task force to clamp down on this kind of fraud.
This crime is spreading. Our sources tell us fraudsters in other states are now using the Minnesota playbook to rip off millions of public dollars meant to help kids. I'm Fox 9 investigator Jeff Abeler.
Well, it's getting political now. Candidates sparring over what can be done, hearings called. But some Democrats say it's the report and investigation itself that's the problem. So let's bring in Minnesota State Senator Jim Abeler. He is a Republican, and he had a hearing on this today. Senator, thank you for joining us. I understand you had a whistleblower that told you even more. What did you learn?
Well, it's remarkable, and fraud is not new, but a whistleblower from inside the department who got fired for talking about it is big news. And the news he told us about, where there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud, and actually some things not being done about it, was just remarkable and really horrible news. Well,
Congressman Keith Ellison, a U.S. congressman, a Democrat from Minnesota, obviously said today Financial stability for the Somali people, both here in Somalia and in Somalia, is one of our strongest protections against the terroristic threat posed by al-Shabaab. We should be making it easier for our constituents to support their families, not impugning the community for it. Fox 9 should issue a thorough correction and apology for its irresponsible reporting. How does that line up with what you know factually about this story?
Well, I know, Keith, we served together in the Minnesota House, and just because somebody who happens to be of a certain ethnic background is found to do something wrong, it doesn't mean it's any impugning any particular population. This is not against Somalis. This is against fraud. You know, it's not Islamophobia, it's fraudophobia, and it's taking literally services away from the children and the very people he would seek to help. And so, you know, Keith, you're wrong on this one. It's about fraud.
Well, and it's interesting because I was reading several reports digging into this, and they said that a number of Somali families do send money back through a system called hawalas, and those are outside the traditional banking system, but help them funnel money to their families at home. But one of the reports I read said that even if they have good intentions and legitimate purposes, many times in certain sections of Somalia, if the money is funneled through those hawalas, al-Shabaab takes a cut. So the bad guys take a cut whether or not you intend it for good or bad.
And that's a problem. I mean, Somalia is a very challenged country, and those small amounts that go there do actually help the families a lot and actually keeps them out of the arms of terrorists. But if they're taking a tribute out of that, that's really unfortunate, especially if it's one of the $1 million donations or, you know, monies that are going to go there.
Okay, so these are Minnesota tax dollars, people there who are working and paying into the system. It's meant to help people who need help with child care. It's meant to help subsidize that, and yet it may be ending up in very sketchy places. Okay, so we understand there have been 10 daycares under investigation. Dozens more are suspected of engaging in this as well. So what is the progress of these fraud investigations? What's being done?
Well, they're moving along, but the headline news about today's report is they're not doing all the investigations they should do. Some of these fraudsters, if you like that word, are very clever. They'll enroll 100 children and then have 10 come and charge for 100. And actually, the current process we have, they keep paying and paying and paying millions of dollars out till they can prove something, instead of just cutting off the money train, which is where part of the fraud comes from. And, you know, it's not free money. It comes from all of us. And so if you're against fraud, if you're for good services, if you're for helping communities develop, as the Somalis are developing in Minnesota in a very healthy way, then you have to put a stop to this kind of thing.
All right, State Senator Jim Abeler, thank you very much for the update. Please let us know as this story develops. We would love to know more.